Over the last year or so, I've been seeing a huge surge of people doing Pokemon challenge videos with things like Monotype runs or trying to beat the entire game with just one Mon, and obviously the ever so popular Nuzlocke challenges are very much still around. Recently, I finally got the inspiration to try my own hand at one of these challenges, but I decided to add my own twist. I asked 8 of my closest friends to give me any possible rule that they could think of. It could be anything as simple as no potions, or something as brutal as, say, no water and fire types. To say the results were funny wouldn't be doing it enough justice. Here's what I ended up with. 1. I have to name all of my Pokemon after Crayola colors. 2. If I catch a Pokemon that has self-destruct, I have to use it at every possible chance. 3. I can't use any Pokemon that have exactly 4 legs. 4. Perma-death. And for my own sake, this doesn't contradict the self-destruct rule. 5. I cannot use any special moves like Flamethrower, for example. 6. I can't catch any Pokemon that are flying in their sprites, like look at Braviary here. 7. I can't catch any Pokemon that have prominent lips. I'll explain this one later. And finally, 8. I have to use Pokemon at a type disadvantage to my opponent. So for example, if they have a fire type out, I have to throw out a grass type. However, because of how I randomized the game, it's kinda hard to stay true to this one. Speaking of which, on top of these rules, I randomized almost every part of the game, including overworld items, all Pokemon encounters, all trainer encounters, all learn sets, and I even randomized whether a move will be physical or special, and this led to some really fun battles. So, with all the context out of the way, let's see how I fare against these awful rules. Before we can truly kick off this journey, I end up having to pick my player character, who I end up naming Homebow, because Homebound doesn't fit. And I end up naming my rival Goob, because Goob is the name of the friend that made this amazing overlay that you're seeing on screen right now. I'm going to end up linking his video down in the description, you guys should definitely go check him out. Upon leaving my house for the first time, I meet up with Goob and we walk over to talk to Bianca, where she presents us with our starter options. Now honestly, I think these first 3 options that I got a hold of, I could have done worse. I got an Electabuzz, a Baltoy, and a Panpour. And after sitting here and procrastinating for a little bit, I ended up going with Electabuzz because it doesn't break any of the rules, and I just think Electabuzz is pretty cool. Another thing I forgot to mention is that when I randomized the game, I actually made it so that I don't need to trade to get access to certain evolutions, so I could just evolve Electabuzz while he's holding an Electrolyzer. I don't need to trade him. So, with luck, as long as his run goes good, I could be running around with a pretty powerful Electivire. Getting back to Electabuzz, I ended up naming him Dandelion because I thought it was a fitting name for my yellow companion. After absolutely destroying Goob's Baltoy in a rival battle, I'm on to Route 1 where I meet my next partner. I meet a Larvitar that I end up naming Thistle. Carrying on, I meet this weird old guy that walks around me and sniffs me. Walk through Flacessi Town, and then I'm on to Route 2, where I immediately lose Thistle. So, after dropping off Thistle in the graveyard, I proceeded into Flacessi Ranch, where I battle Goob once again, take out his team, and then I actually run into a Beldum that I capture and I name it Manatee. Now, I know that I said nothing can be flying in their sprites, but Beldum's levitating, so it doesn't count, I can use it. And then, of course, as if losing Thistle early on wasn't enough, I lose Dandelion to a Krabby. So, after doing my due diligence and rescuing the herdier for the Flacessi Ranchers, I head back to town, catching another Beldum along the way, and I name it Blutiful. Upon returning from the ranch, the old guy from before ends up taking me into his school, and he's insistent that I have to battle his students. And you know, I walk into this encounter pretty confident. I have 2 Beldums, I should be able to take them out with no problem. I ate my words very fast, and I lost both to a Poniard, and just like that, my first attempt at this run was over. Now, obviously, this video would be a whole lot shorter if I ended up just dropping it and not trying it again after that, but after 10 minutes of contemplation, we went right back at it. This time, my starter options were a little bit more slim. There was a Deerling, which is obviously the quadruped rule. I got a Pupitar, and then a Growlithe, which is another quadruped. So, obviously, I ended up picking Pupitar, and we started our journey with Mid the Pupitar. For the sake of saving time, I'm just going to very quickly run through to the point where I just lost at, just so that we can get caught up. I very quickly stomped Goob's team again using mid because this little dude had a physical roar of time, which is awesome. I capture my second team member, Periwinkle the Metatite. I have my second encounter with Goob, who Periwinkle ends up taking out pretty easily. And I actually end up running into a Pokemon that breaks rule number 7, no prominent lips. What that rule is just simply I can't use Pokemon where their lips are exaggerated, so I can't use like Magikarp, I can't use Jinx, I can't use Gyarados. Anything where its lips are large. Next up, I run into a Clink who has a physical Draco Meteor, and I end up naming him Oatmeal. I end up very quickly finding myself back at the school where I lost my last run, and once I'm face to face with this kid again, I end up using Oatmeal to absolutely destroy his Krabby with a Draco Meteor. Moving on to the second student, I managed to handle her pretty easily because all she has is a Clink, and I have Mid who has Fire Pledge. So, throw out a couple of those, and then she's out of the way. And at last, I figure it's probably time to go take on the first gym. Upon entering the gym, I'm approached by this nice gentleman here who gives me a fresh water, and you know, it's going to be pretty refreshing after I give the beat down to Charon's students. I quickly take out both of the trainers, and then it's finally on to the big man himself, Charon. Our battle starts off with Charon sending out a Meryl, and I end up sending out Mid. And after using a couple roar of times to deal with a potion heal, Meryl is no more. Charon then ends up sending out a Meowth, and I send out Periwinkle so that he can get some action too. And of course by action, I mean Periwinkle just takes out Meowth with 2 searing shots. And just like that, Charon is defeated, I get my first gym badge, and I actually end up getting TM83 Sketch as a reward thanks to the randomized TMs. And this is going to come and help much later in the run. On my way towards Burbank City, I end up finding the next member of my team in the form of a seal. I end up naming him Cornflower, and let me tell you, I think this boy was going to be legendary. Upon entering Burbank City, I get a call from my loving mother, and then I end up running into Roxanne, who's having daddy issues, I think. And to make things worse, I'm just going to escalate the problem here, and I end up going off to challenge her gym immediately. Upon entering the gym, I very quickly take out both of Roxanne's band members so that I can get rid of this horrible racket and I can just get straight to the battle. Or maybe I'm being too harsh. I guess the singing's not that bad. Going into this battle, I was definitely feeling that surge of confidence again where I was, you know, like, oh yeah, look, I have 4 team members. This is going to go great. What could possibly go wrong? And let me tell you, I found out what could go wrong almost immediately when Roxanne sent out this Cackney right here. The first problem on the long list that happens in this battle is that I immediately find out that Cackney has Flash Fire, so I cannot hit this thing with any sort of fire moves. And of course it immediately retaliates with a Leaf Storm, and Mid's dead. Oops. I ended up sending out Periwinkle immediately after to do some damage, and you know, she ended up landing some hits. But of course, this Cackney just had Psychic, because why not? And Periwinkle just couldn't handle it. So, Periwinkle was dead. Something kind of weird happened with my recording here. I ended up sending out Oatmeal, and I managed to take out Cackney using Draco Meteor, but I don't know what happened. Moving on, though, Roxanne has a Growlithe, and as you can see on your screen here, Oatmeal is now dead as well. Last but not least, I end up sending out our Lord and Savior Cornflower, and after a long battle, I end up managing to taking out Growlithe with a couple lucky water pledges. And thankfully, we managed to move on from this with, sadly, only 1 survivor. This does, however, mean that we managed to secure our second gym badge. Moving on, I go ahead and drop those 3 off at the graveyard, and then I move on to go catch some new team members. I very excitedly end up running into a Bulbasaur that I capture, and I name Caribbean, and I actually end up evolving him into an Ivysaur immediately. Continuing off of that, I find an Eevee that I catch and name Olive. And then it was in this excitement that I realized I can't use any quadrupeds. So I drop those 2 off at the box, and then I continue my look for a new team member, and I find that Litwick, and I end up naming it Gray. Oh yeah, I also run into a Venonat, and I end up naming him Cadet. Moving on, I very quickly become a movie star, I battle some Team Plasma grunts, and then I'm on my way to Castelia City. After battling Team Plasma through the sewers, I end up running into this weird science guy, and then I end up running past him into the tunnels, and I find this awesome little Charmander. Oh, wait. I think Cadet died at some point in here. The Charmander's name is Brick, by the way. I then go ahead and take the time to train up, and I evolve Brick into a powerful Charmeleon, and I can just already tell that this guy is going to be a huge member of the team. Now, some of you may be thinking ahead to, oh no, Charizard's flying. He's not flying in the sprite. I can use him. Leaving the sewers, I hop on my bike that some weird clown gave me, and I make my way over to Berg to make my attempt at the third gym. Now, this gym took me way longer than I would like to admit. Nothing serious happened, I didn't get stuck in any battles, or I didn't lose anybody. I just, for whatever reason, got in here for a very long time. I think this gym took me a total of about 30 minutes of recording, and I just totally cut it out because I just wanted to showcase the gym leader battle. Upon reaching Berg, I actually ended up backtracking out of the gym, and I went to go catch another team member just to have some extra padding, and ended up catching a Staryu. And being that Staryu is a Gen 1 Pokemon, and all those towns are named after colors, I found it fitting to name Staryu Cerulean. Kicking off this battle, Berg sends out Aridos, and I end up sending out Brick. And I was thankfully prepared for this battle. Not necessarily that I knew what he was going to have, but I had sketched Drill Peck onto Charmeleon just in case, and thank God did it come in handy here. I take out Aridos after using a Drill Peck, and then I'm on to the next Pokemon. Moving on, Berg sends out Swampert, and I send out Cerulean because this funny little dude happens to have Magical Leaf. And after landing a good hit, I very quickly realized that this was a bad idea. Cerulean ends up going down to an Energy Ball in the first battle that I ever used him, and I guess that's what I had him on the team for. I retaliate by sending out Brick, and after a very long battle of attrition, having Swampert poisoned and Brick poisoned, I finally managed to take out Swampert with some poison, and gosh, this battle could not have dragged on for any longer. And then finally, Berg's ace Pokemon ends up just being a Shuppet, and I take it out with a couple Drill Pecks, and boom, the third gym badge is ours. Moving on to Route 4, I end up running into Colress once again, and he ends up actually taking out Gray off camera. I wish I had it recorded, but it happened. Carrying on with the two trusty companions that I have left, I finish my journey through the desert, and then I end up in Nimbasa City, where I take on my first double battle against the Subway Brothers. Oh, wait, sorry, no, it's Subway Bosses. Probably shouldn't go getting those confused. I end up taking out Ingo and Emmett with relative ease, and then I move on to the next area past Nimbasa City so I can collect some Pokemon in hopes of rebuilding my team before I take on the next gym. First off, I end up running into a Minccino, and I name this little dude Mint. Carrying on, I run into a Carnivine, and this one had me really excited because I have never once used a Carnivine on any of my Pokemon teams, and I name him Shamrock. Following up, I actually end up catching one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, and I catch Ludicolo, who I named Verde, and I figured it was fitting, you know, they're a little mariachi-looking guy, and Verde is Spanish for green, and, you know. And then to round out my team with Pokemon number 6, I accidentally catch something that breaks one of the rules, and, it's okay, they end up dying pretty fast. But I catch a Smoochum that I name Powder, and then I very quickly evolve said Smoochum into a Jinx. Carrying back on to Nimbasa City, I end up battling this girl so that I can win myself a date on the Ferris wheel. I ride around some roller coasters, and then I fabulously walk the runway all the way up to Elise. And after she acknowledges just how fabulous I am, we commence our next gym battle. Elise starts by sending out a Grovyle, and I send out Verde. I very quickly switch out Verde to Shamrock because I realize I can just absolutely obliterate Grovyle using Shamrock's powerful Air Slash. Moving on, I end up sending out Powder while Elise sends out a Granbull. And at first I thought this was a good matchup, and I very quickly realized how wrong I was, and as I mentioned before, Powder dies very fast. just like that, she's gone. Looking back at the recording, I'm not sure what happened, but at some point I messed up my overlay, and I guess Mint was a steel type, according to my overlay. So yeah, Mint is a steel type right now. In an attempt to get vengeance for Powder, I end up sending out Brick, and after using an Electro Web or two, I realized that the damage wasn't going to go anywhere. So I figured, why not send out the trusty Cornflower, who I, once again, immediately regret sending out, and Cornflower is gone. And, I figure I just don't want to deal with this anymore, so I send out Verde, and I hit Granville with the Scald and take him out with no problem. Up next, Elise ends up sending out a Flaffy, and I retaliate by sending out Mint. Flaffy starts out by using a powerful Flame Charge, but after taking a couple Blaze Kicks and one punishment, it's pretty apparent that Flaffy stood no chance from the get-go, and just like that, I end up taking out Elise. After adding my 4th gym badge to my collection, I triumphantly make my way over to Driftvale City, where I get to listen to this absolute banger of a song that all of us have definitely become way too familiar with. After dropping off our fallen allies in the graveyard, I end up going on and catching a Snover, who I name Macaroni, and then I proceed to go and battle this old guy who ends up giving me this kid's lost dog. And then I immediately evolve said lost dog so that it's not breaking the quadruped rule, and just like that, we have a Zoroark on our team. And with very little preparation required, we were on to gym number 5. And if you look at my overlay, I messed up typings again, and I must have decided that Macaroni was a Psychic and Grass type. Oh well. Carrying on, we begin our battle with the 5th gym leader, Clay. Now, in a normal playthrough of this game, I would be absolutely terrified when I get around to Clay if I don't have a team built around being ready to handle whatever he's going to throw out at me. But due to the nature of the randomizer, Clay was kind of a pushover. He starts off by sending out a Swadloon, and I send out Brick, and you already know where this is going. One Drill Peck very quickly takes out Swadloon. Up next, I send out Zoroark, and Clay sends out a Wigglytuff, who, after a Hammer Arm and a couple wake-up slaps, ends up going down with little to no resistance. For Clay's last Pokemon, Mantine, I end up sending out our favorite Psychic Grass-type Macaroni, and Mantine uses a move immediately called Doom Desire. Now, let me preface, I love Pokemon. I have no idea what this move is. I had never seen it before playing through this randomizer, and I figured it was going to be a one-hit KO move, but I just kind of played along with it. And sure enough, after a couple turns, Macaroni died. I end up sending out Brick to finish off the job, and with a well-used Electro Web, I took out Mantine with no problem, and just like that, the 5th gym badge was mine. Shortly after, I end up heading over to the Pokemon World Tournament, where I challenged Goob, and then I also realized I was still carrying around Macaroni's corpse, so I go and bury that in the graveyard. Returning to the Pokemon World Tournament, I run into this awesome-looking pirate ship, and me and Goob go and challenge the Team Plasma Grunts that are on board. And after defeating said Plasma Grunts, Brick evolves into Charizard finally, and he just hits that final power spike that he really needed to be, well, powerful. And see, look, he's not flying in the Sprite, he's safe to use. Along my way to Chargestone Cave, I end up running into an Ammonite, and I capture him obviously, and I name him Azul. Now, I know looking at the Sprite, it's kind of hard to tell, but I think that this thing technically has 6 legs, not 4, so I'm kind of just going off of my best judgment to whether or not I can use it on my team. Upon entering Chargestone Cave, I at long last run into Bianca again, who kind of just sits there and rambles about stones and electricity and how cool they are and whatnot, and then she just runs off. So I figure I should probably do the same, and I start making my way through the cave. Total side note, I think Chargestone Cave is probably one of the best locations in all of Pokemon Black and White. There's just something about the aesthetic of it with all the electricity and the floating stones, and granted, it's not any crazy puzzles, but how you have to move the stones around to open up new paths, I think it's just really cool. Now, at some point running around through Chargestone Cave, I got into a triple battle, and I ended up tragically losing both Mint and Azul. However, my sorrows were very quickly wiped away because I run into a Squirtle. and this is by far one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I end up naming Squirtle Denim, and we carry about our way. Upon entering Miss Charlton City, I end up running into Professor Juniper, and after exchanging some real quick words with her, I go over to the Pokemon Center where I make some edits to my team. I end up adding on Denim, who I very quickly evolved into a Blastoise, and I add Indigo the Gengar, who I also caught in Chargestone Cave. I just admittedly forgot to record when I caught him. Looking back at it now, if I really wanted to keep up with the Gen 1 callbacks, I very well could have just named Blastoise Blue and Brick Red. But, you know, I think Denim and Brick are more fun and fitting, so I guess I won't dwell on it too much. Upon entering the next gym, this old guy comes flying into me. And then he very gentlemanly offers me a fresh water, and admittedly, I was going to need this. After I very quickly demolished Skyla's team, I was definitely going to be parched. Beginning our battle against Skyla, she ends up sending out a Charmeleon, and I send out Denim. Oh yeah, did I mention Denim has a physical spatial rend? This is pretty freaking awesome considering I had the physical Roar of Time earlier. So after taking out Charmeleon, I send in Brick, and Skyla sends out a Kangaskhan. I try hitting Kangaskhan with a Sheer Cold, and then I realized it doesn't affect it. So I end up switching out to Indigo, and I hit it with a couple Sludge Bombs until eventually Kangaskhan goes down. Moving on to Skyla's ace Pokemon, she seems to have stolen Elisa's Zebstrika. And honestly, I was a little intimidated by this thing at first. And I very quickly realized that this thing had no attack moves whatsoever. It had Curse, it had Lock On, and a couple other moves. And then, sure enough, after about 4 rounds and he trying to hit me several times, I realized it literally could not. So, I ended up switching out to Verde. I used Heart Swap to steal all of its stat boosts, and then I took it out with a couple hits. And just like that, with minimal effort, Gym Badge number 6 was ours. Moving on from there, we end up catching a flight all the way over to Lentomas Town, and very shortly I find myself stuck in Reversal Mountain. Now, I shouldn't say necessarily stuck because the wild Pokemon were giving me a challenge. I just happened to keep running into hordes upon hordes of double battles with Piplups. I ended up catching one, and I named it Fuzzy. I sent it to the box, though, because I wasn't necessarily sure if I wanted to use it just yet, so it was just kind of sitting there for use later. Oh, and Fuzzy is short for Fuzzy Wuzzy, which, yes, is an actual Crayola color. My buddy just was insistent that I needed to use this at some point during the playthrough, and I figured Piplup was right for it. And after all these battles with Piplup, I finally could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I run into... Oh, Riolu and, Wow, I just butchered that. That is Electric, not Electrike. Good job. Upon reaching Undella Town, I end up running over to the Pokemon Center to get healed up, and then I trigger the next rival encounter. And this encounter actually went a lot different from how I was expecting it to. To begin off, he threw out a Fearow and I threw out Denim. I ended up taking out Fearow with little to no problem, and then out came his Sawsbuck, so I made the reasonable assumption of just sending out Brick. And this Sawsbuck nearly took out Brick with 1 hit, leaving him at 2 HP. And thank God it didn't go down. Moving up next, Goob sent out a Coffagrigus, and oh my gosh, this thing was the bane of my existence. It took so freaking long to get rid of it. I ended up cutting it down, but I think I was probably on Coffagrigus for 10 minutes alone. Oh yeah, that's right. I found another move that I hadn't seen before. So Zoroark ended up learning a move called Healing Wish, and I kind of just pressed it without thinking anything about it. And then I very quickly found out that Healing Wish kills the user. So I lost Zoroark. Oops. After defeating Goob, I make my way over to the Pokemon Center, where I end up trading Zoroark out for my boy Robin Egg the Mudkip. And of course, I very quickly evolved Mudkip into a Swampert so that he's actually ready to battle. And if you're wondering where he came from, I found Mudkip in Reversal Mountain as well, and this is just another case like Indigo where I admittedly caught it and just totally forgot to hit the record button when I encountered it. So, apologies for that, but we have Robinegg. After running around for a little bit, I finally encounter my first overworld legendary Pokemon, and it's Cavalion. Until I interact with it and realize, no, that's not Cavalion, that's a Kyurem. After sitting there for a couple minutes contemplating whether or not I even wanted to catch this thing, I ended up just throwing my Master Ball at it and said screw it, and then I named it Gray after the Litwick that we lost way back at the start of this playthrough. And after sending Gray back to the boxes with no intent of ever actually using this thing, I carry on my way. It was actually kind of funny, because right after catching Kyurem, I end up in Lacinosa Town, where Professor Juniper and Bianca drag you over to this old lady's house, and she actually sits there and tells you a story, and she perfectly in detail describes Kyurem without actually saying its name. And the entire time I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, lady, I know, I just caught this thing. Carrying on, I end up at the village bridge where I run into this old guy who is on a 999 win streak, and he's insistent on making me his 1000th win. Now, obviously, I normally try to be a nice guy, but I need to show him what's up. So after very quickly destroying his team, I end up totally ruining his life goal and carry on about my merry day. Carrying on, I end up running into Virizion, who turns out to be a Groudon. After a bit of a back and forth yawn competition between Indigo and Groudon, I end up catching Groudon in a nest ball, and I name him Mango Tango, which I personally think is very fitting. Upon reaching Opelousas City, I end up making some real quick team adjustments, and I swap out Indigo for Mango Tango. And just like that, I think I'm ready to go and challenge Drayden for the 8th gym badge. For the 7th gym badge. The Opelousas gym in this game always just really stood out to me. I think there's something really cool about being able to control the dragon statues and having them just smash into each other before you get into a battle. It's just so cinematic, and I mean, this entire game is incredibly cinematic compared to any other game in the series, or at least up until this point. But it's just so much fun to battle through this gym, and I love it. However, after talking up this gym so much, I end up getting into my first battle, and I very quickly lose Verde the Ludicolo. So, after a quick trip to drop him off at the graveyard, I end up switching in Fuzzy. And after adding Fuzzy to the team, I go ahead and evolve him right up to an Empoleon so that he's up to snuff for this gym battle. Upon beginning the battle with Drayden, he sends out a Jinx and I send out Fuzzy so that he can get his own chance in the spotlight. Now, something did end up happening with this recording. I think my cat might have stepped on the keyboard, and I ended up having to restart the recording once I actually managed to make it over to Drayden's ace, Crobat, and this is how it went from there. After Crobat sits there and sets up a ton of safeguards and he paralyzes Denim, I finally managed to whittle it down using Aurora Beam, and just like that, the 7th badge is finally mine, and I can carry on this journey. Upon leaving the gym, Team Plasma shows up and decides to start just blasting ice everywhere. So, Drayden asked me to go and take care of them, so I defeat some of the Plasma Grunts, I defeat their leader, and then I eventually end up fighting this cool ninja guy. And after scaring him off, I get on a phone call with my best friends, and I'm on my way to the next gym. Before I get to Humalao Town, I just want to acknowledge another really beautiful part of this game. And obviously, yes, this is all pixel art, this is all rendered on the DS engine. But at the time, it was so impressive running through the marine tube for the first time. It's just an awesome sight to watch. The sound is really cool. And it's probably one of my favorite parts of this game, aside from obviously the gym that I just mentioned. And I thought it was just worth taking a second to talk about. And here, I mean, just enjoy it for yourself for a little bit. Upon entering Humalao Town, I run into Goob, and he tells me to just go straight for the gym leader, so I figured, why not? And after a quick gym challenge, I'm beginning my battle against Marlin for the 8th gym badge. Marlin starts off by sending out Nidoking, and I retaliate by sending out Mango Tango. I start out by putting Nidoking to sleep with the Yawn just to make sure that he's not able to set up anything. And then I just go ahead and land a couple Blaze Kicks, and with relative ease, Nidoking is down. Up next, I go ahead and send out Robin Egg when Marlin sends out an Aerodactyl. And following suit with Nidoking, Aerodactyl goes down pretty easily just with a couple Octozookas. For Marlin's ace Pokemon, he ends up sending out a Dugong, and I retaliate by sending out Fuzzy Wuzzy because this dude has Horn Leech, and it takes him out with, once again, minimal problem. While fighting this Dugong, though, I did kind of have a sad moment. I thought about our boy Cornflower that we lost so long ago, and, you know, it would have been kind of cool to make it to the end of the game with a Dugong. I don't think I've ever done that before, but, you know, no time to think about that now. Upon defeating Marlin, we get our 8th and final gym badge. The TM that he ends up giving me is nothing really. Well, yes, it is TM55 Superpower. It ended up actually being a special TM, so I couldn't use it for this run anyways. After leaving the gym, it was time to go and encounter Terrakion, and Terrakion ended up being a Raikou, which was really freaking cool. But I personally don't really care for Legendary Beasts too much aside from Entei, so I kind of just knocked it out and carried on about my adventure. Continuing my pursuit of Team Galactic, because I kind of forgot about them, I go and wake up this Crustle who really looks like a Medicham, I'm not sure why. And then after defeating it, I end up getting onto the pirate ship once again. I end up battling a bunch of grunts, I battle one of their leaders again, and then I eventually make my way over to Colress, and I absolutely just pound him into the ground and get revenge for Gray for what he did all the way back on Route 4. Afterwards, I end up chasing the true leader of Team Galactic, Ghetsis, all the way back into the cave in Giant Chasm where he shows that he has his own Kyurem, and he's about to kill me, and then he transforms, and all this other exposition stuff. Skipping ahead, I end up going and trying to challenge it, and it turns out that this thing was just a Manaphy in disguise. Now, defeating the imposter Kyurem seemed to really piss off Ghetsis for some reason, so I ended up having to battle him immediately after. The whole battle against Ghetsis started out pretty strong, and then, of course, tragedy strikes. Denim ends up going down to Gengar, and we lose one of our most valuable team members. Thankfully, I pretty much managed to wipe the floor with the entire rest of Ghetsis' team, and I lost the recording for that as well. I really need to work on that. But carrying on, Ghetsis sits here, yells for a little bit, N talks to him, tells him to go home because he's crazy and senile. And then N flies away on Reshiram, and I can go about my way to Victory Road. It's a real shame, but I think Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 are the final cool, like, badge check stations that we got. This one's not necessarily anything super impressive, but it's just really cool running through and having it check all of your badges. It scans, turns on the statues, and then once you hit the end, it just drops this awesome, huge gate at the end. And after being deemed worthy by the gate, we are on our way through Victory Road. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that I replaced Denim with Sienna the Coffagrius. I don't remember where I caught this thing, admittedly. It just was in my box as a Yamask. So welcome to the Team Sienna. It's good to have you. Along my way through Victory Road, I ended up catching a Weavile. I didn't really have an intent of using it, but I caught it just in case if I wanted to flex around my team. And then I just named it Purple, and I sent it off to Box 8. I didn't really record too much while I was running through Victory Road because, admittedly, nothing of substance happened. I didn't catch anything aside from Weavile. I didn't really lose anybody. I just kind of ran through and trained up. So I decided I didn't need to record too much of it. And at long last, we were finally at the grand summit of the Victory Road, the Pokemon League, where obviously we would go off and face the Elite Four. Now, with this challenge being a randomizer, once again, there's no real reason for me to pick out any specific order to go after all the Elite Four members, so I just ended up going left to right. Starting off my Elite Four run against Chantal, I was really excited because I went through all the hardships getting here. I lost so many different team members, I overcame so many hurdles, and I nearly lost the run several times along the way to get here. And I was just really excited to get to this final challenge. And sadly, the Elite Four ended up being a total pushover. Chantal ended up going down to me just using Brick the entire time. I'm pretty sure I only had to use Drill Tech. So, moving on, I went over to Grimsley and I thought, okay, yeah, you know what, that one was just easy by pure fluke. This one's going to go much better. So, we kick off our battle against Grimsley. And once again, he is a total pushover. Starts out by sending out Eradicate, and I'm like, you know, this could be a problem. And it wasn't. By the end, I sent out Mango, killed his Meganium with a couple Blaze Kicks, and I was on to the next Elite Four member. Now, after those first two battles being total pushovers, I thought to myself, you know, there's no way there could be 3 easy battles in a row. So after going over to Caitlyn, waking her up, I'm like, you know what? I just woke her up. She's going to be angry. This is going to be a hard battle. And to my surprise, it was not. I think the hardest part of this battle was when Caitlyn ended up using a full restore on Vileplume, and I had to watch that thing's health bar go all the way up, all the way back down, activate Sturdy, and then finally die. And then last but not least, to round out this lackluster Elite Four challenge, we were on the head honcho Marshall. And you know, at this point I still had my hopes up, you know? Maybe I'll have one challenging Elite Four run. I really wanted to lose a Pokemon, I wanted something dramatic to happen. And then he sends out a Miltank. After battling through his team, he ended up having an Aggron at the end, and I want to say it was a challenge, but the biggest challenge was once again just lowering that thing's health bar to 0. It didn't actually hit me a single time, and yeah. Just like that, the Elite Four was over. After pretty much mopping the floor with all of the Elite Four members, it was finally time for me to go on to take on Champion Iris, and I was actually very excited for this. I played through Black 2 and White 2 as a kid a lot, and for whatever reason, I don't ever actually remember the champion room. So anytime I see this for the first time after like a year or so, it just excites me so much. After Iris gives me her whole speech about how she's the champion and how she's going to stop me from becoming the champion or taking her down or whatever she said, I admittedly didn't read it, I just kept pressing the A button. I was greeted with this cool cinematic, and I started the battle. And you know, this one actually had me a little worried. The battle started off with her sending out a Melodic, and due to Cynthia, this thing just gave me immediate PTSD. After setting up a Leech Seed on Melodic, I end up switching into Fuzzy, who takes on a Magnitude, and it's super effective, but thankfully this boy ended up being very tanky. Fuzzy ends up taking one more Magnitude, and I retaliate by using a Horn Leech, and then another Horn Leech, and it takes out Melodic with relative ease, but you know, this one was at least a potential threat, so we're starting off good. Up next, we had a cool little starter battle between Robin Egg and Iris's Typhlosion. I end up managing to get a Paralysis off on Typhlosion because Robin Egg had Status Spore, and then Iris, sure enough, heals it up with an entire full restore, and I have to whittle this thing's health bar down again. After the Effect Spore causes poison this time instead of paralysis, Typhlosion eventually goes down. Iris sends out a Nidoking, and this thing wasn't noteworthy, so I took it down after a couple hits. And then Iris ended up sending out this Emboar. In a bit of retaliation to her fire starter, I end up sending out Brick, and after a couple drill pecks, Emboar ends up going down pretty easily. Next up, Iris ends up sending out a little bit of an intimidating Lucario, and I figured this is the perfect time for Mango Tango to shine, so I throw him out, and I kick Lucario with Blaze Kick a couple times, and he ends up going down. Interestingly enough, Iris's ace Pokemon ends up being a Sawk, and due to Brick being the Pokemon that, now I haven't necessarily had the longest, but the one that I've had the longest that's still alive, I see this as the perfect opportunity to send Brick out and finish Sawk off with one more Drill Peck. And after all this effort, I finally take down Iris, and I end this run on a perfect note. I follow Iris into the Hall of Fame so I can immortalize my team, and just like that, I get to watch the credits roll after I just completed this insanely, actually fun challenge run. You know, I ended up having a lot more fun with this entire thing than I expected, and I would definitely do something like this again. I had always wanted to do a challenge run on this game so damn badly, but I just for whatever reason couldn't get the motivation to do it. I couldn't find the energy to really sit down and commit to it. And like I said, recently I saw the influx of videos of people doing these things, and I had the encouragement of my friends, and this was the outcome of it, and I'm really proud with what happened. Black 2 and White 2 are by far some of my favorite Pokemon games, so I think that definitely made it a bit easier, because it's a lot easier for me to work on a video when I really enjoy whatever the source material is. If you ended up watching all the way to the end of this video, I just want to say thank you so much. This video took me a couple weeks to put together. I'm still fresh with editing, and I'm still learning how to do this whole YouTube thing. And this is probably one of my most ambitious projects yet, not from an editing standpoint, but just from a recording standpoint, and trying to get everything together that I needed, keeping the overlay updated, getting everything coordinated properly. And once again, I just can't express how thankful I am if you made it to the end of this video. So, without further ado, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thank you for watching so much. If you want to see more, like and subscribe, and if you have any other ideas for more challenge runs or any other kind of videos you want to see me do, leave it in the comments below. Thank you. Bye.